Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton. My name is Stephen Atkinson and I'm leading the service this morning. Karen Trollope Kumar will be speaking to us today on compassion. Also assisting us as music ministers are Rachel Derry, Cindy Carey, and members of our choir. And our technical team, making sure all of this works, is John Elliott, Bruce McPherson, and Tim Versteeg. We are not the first people on this land, nor will we be the last. We acknowledge our connection to the web of all existence, honoring the past and preparing for the future. The stewardship of the original people who lived here preserved this place for our generation. We seek to be respectful stewards of this place for those who follow. Our goal in this congregation is to extend our hearts in welcome to whomever you may be. We are connected through our desire to live out our ideals of peace, love, and justice for all. We are here to love one another and encourage each other in our spiritual growth. Our congregational mission includes our commitment to nurture one another, serve the community, and inspire action to heal the world. This is our call to worship today. In our times, in our world, even in our neighborhoods, we face a dismaying struggle around compassion. This is not often the explicit material of this struggle. Rather, the need for compassion, its deficiency or absence, and the enlargement and evolution of it is the underlying text, the yearned for solution, and the necessary balm for much of what is ailing us. At every level of human work, beginning in the intimacy of our own hearts, we must invite the grace of compassion and rehearse and express it in all we do. As we enter worship today, let us both soften and strengthen ourselves to become warriors of and for compassion. That is likely a jarring or uncomfortable phrase, warriors for compassion, yet it lifts our attention to the energy and focus our times need from us. May this worship service assist us to prepare. Let us now enter worship. Our chalice represents the light of hope at the center of our faith tradition. The spark of this flame draws us into our time of worship and community. If you have your own chalice, this is the time to light it, as we are all invited to recite the unison chalice lighting words appearing on your screen. May this flame be the light of friendship and love.
This morning, we honor the memory of our sister in faith, Dorothy Lambeth. Dorothy was a longtime member of this congregation and held many leadership roles over the years. We will no longer hear the sound of her voice or feel the touch of her hand, and we will extinguish the flame of our chalice to mark her physical death. Yet Dorothy's spirit lives on in the hearts and minds of those she touched on her life journey. So from the chalice of this community of memory and hope, we will then light a candle to symbolize her inspiration and influence that go on shining within us. In mystery we are born, in mystery we live, and in mystery we die.
Number 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation. Once to every soul and nation comes the moment to decide.
Our story this morning is I Am Love, a book of compassion, written by Susan Verd and art by Peter H. Reynolds. When I see someone going through a storm of hurt and unfairness, of anger and sadness, when the sun disappears and the skies grow dark, and I see there is fear, I ask myself, what can I do to help let the light back in? I put my hands on my heart and listen, and that is where I find the answer. I have compassion. I act with tenderness. I am love. I can listen and not say a word. I can be there. Love is being present. I can hug and hold and say everything will be all right. Love is comfort. I can speak softly and choose my words and actions carefully. Love is gentle. I can give thanks for all I have and am able to share. Love is gratitude. I can keep my mind and body safe and healthy. Love is taking care of me. I can express what's important to me. Love is creative. I can know that no one is perfect. Love is understanding. I can do my best to make things better when something is wrong. Love is effort. I can celebrate those I've loved before. Love is remembering. I can find goodness in a kind word, a helping hand, or a shared smile. Love is tiny gestures. I can breathe in the air that the whole world shares and know all creatures are made from the very same stardust. Love is connection. When the clouds roll in for others and for me, I know now there's something I can do. I can let my heart lead the way. I am love. You are love. We are love. And with love, we will weather the storm and light up the sky together. And that's the end of our story this morning.
In this moment of contemplation, I invite you to relax. Close your eyes if you like and breathe deeply. Following our reading, there will be a few moments of silence, then followed by music. Our contemplative words this morning are by William Stafford, A Ritual to Read to Each Other. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs and not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider, lest the parade of our mutual life gets lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes, or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep.
I behold you, beautiful one. I behold you, child of the earth and sun. Let my love wash over you. Let my love wash over you. I behold you, beautiful one. I behold you, child of the earth and sun. Let my love wash over you. Let my love wash over you. I behold you, beautiful one. I behold you, child of the earth and sun. Let my love wash over you. Let my love wash over you. I behold you, beautiful one. I behold you, child of the earth and sun. Let my love wash over you. Let my love wash over you.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful. A sermon on compassion. What a fascinating but challenging topic. As I sat down to write this talk, so many thoughts and reflections popped into my mind that it seemed almost overwhelming to organize my thoughts. So, as I often do when faced with a puzzle, I turned to that great all-encompassing source of information, Wikipedia. Here's what Wikipedia says about compassion. Compassion is an emotion that is a sense of shared suffering, most often combined with a desire to alleviate or reduce the suffering of another. Compassion essentially arises through empathy and is characterized through actions, wherein a person acting with compassion will seek to aid those they feel compassionate for. I think that's a pretty good definition. It highlights the fact that compassion is not just a feeling that arises when you're confronted with another's suffering, but also that this feeling leads to action. You want to do something to relieve that suffering. The emotion of compassion seems to have a deep evolutionary purpose. Studies in neurobiology have shown that when we feel compassion, our pituitary gland secretes oxytocin, which is known as the bonding hormone. Also, levels of cortisol drop, the hormone that's released in times of stress. Our heart rate slows and pleasure centers in the brain are activated, creating a positive feedback loop that reinforces the emotion of compassion. In evolutionary terms, the emotion of compassion promotes human survival by fostering the type of cooperation that's necessary for communities to thrive. Speaking of evolution, I discovered a fascinating bit of info about Charles Darwin and his views on compassion. The term survival of the fittest is often attributed to Darwin. However, it turns out that this term was actually coined by a guy named Herbert Spencer, who was a leading light in the social Darwinist movement. The social Darwinists wanted to justify class and race superiority by using genetic arguments. So what did Darwin actually believe? He wrote, "Communities which include the greatest number of the most sympathetic members would flourish best and rear the greatest number of offspring." In other words, he was advocating the survival of the kindest, quite a different message than the one the social Darwinists were propagating. So it appears that compassion is a naturally evolved and adaptive trait. Without it, the survival and flourishing of our species would be unlikely. But compassion can be tricky. As I'd said, the feeling of compassion is linked to an action to relieve the suffering of another. But what if it's difficult to perform any such action? What if the suffering we perceive is so great that we feel overwhelmed? A natural human tendency then becomes to turn away from the suffering, because experiencing the feeling without being able to take any action is extremely painful. I'm thinking of the year 2015, when the Syrian refugee crisis was escalating to an unimaginable degree. Thousands of refugees were fleeing war-torn Syria, risking their lives to reach Greece or Turkey. Day after day, we were reading about disasters at sea, where flimsy crafts containing hundreds of refugees were foundering, with the subsequent terrible death toll. Yet along with the stories of the refugees were other stories of countries whose leaders feared an unstoppable tide of people, people who were different, people who might be terrorists. Borders were closing, aid was drying up. And then the narrative changed. It was that image of little Alan Kurdi, the 3-year-old child whose body washed up on a beach in Turkey. Suddenly, the Syrian refugee crisis became personal, tangible. He was just a little boy whose mother was named Rehana and his brother Galib, all of whom drowned that day. They were fleeing an impossible situation, and they were simply seeking a safe haven. When the image of that child flashed around the world, something profound changed. Many European countries began opening their borders, and aid money began to flow again. Alan Kurdi's image made the Syrian refugee crisis real to people around the world. Perhaps we can think of compassion in two ways. The yin of compassion is gentle and nurturing, actions that console and soothe. But the yang of compassion is action to challenge danger or injustice. We can call this fierce compassion. The firefighter who dashes into a burning building is experiencing fierce compassion, and so is the activist who challenges systemic oppression. When we become aware of injustice, we can be galvanized into purposeful action. This requires strength and determination. In our opening words, read by Stephen Atkinson today, we heard a call to become warriors for compassion. We need to find the courage within ourselves to do what is right, even if it's hard. Last Sunday, Victoria mentioned the work of the Commission on Institutional Change in the UUA. Members of the commission invited members of racialized communities to participate in focus groups and to provide individual testimonies to study the ways in which systemic discrimination is embedded in our faith tradition. Recommendations from that process are outlined in the document Widening the Circle, available on the UUA website. Albert Einstein wrote that when we perceive ourselves as separate from the rest of humanity and the natural world, we are experiencing an optical delusion of our consciousness. He goes on to say, this delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection just for a few people closest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. To widen our circle of compassion, isn't that the essence of the Golden Rule, which is foundational to so many religious traditions? When we think of great spiritual teachers like Jesus and Buddha, compassion was central to their message. Many of you will be familiar with the works of Karen Armstrong. She's a leading writer on comparative religion. She was a former Roman Catholic nun who went from a conservative to a more liberal and mystical Christian faith. Her current work focuses on the commonalities of the major religions, such as the importance of compassion and the Golden Rule. She gave a wonderful TED talk about her work, and she received the $100,000 TED Prize in February 2008. She used that occasion to call for the creation of a Charter for Compassion, which was unveiled the following year. If you Google Charter for Compassion, you can see all the initiatives being promoted to foster compassion in communities around the world. You can even take an online course called Our Shared Humanity, in which Nobel Prize winners, spiritual leaders, psychologists, and interfaith activists share their insights about compassion and ways of building bridges between communities. Check out their website to see all the wonderful work they're involved in. Of course, it's not just humans who are capable of compassion. There are myriad examples of compassion in the animal world as well. One of my favorite YouTube clips features a hedgehog sitting motionless in the middle of a busy road. A crow swoops down and begins to peck gently at the hedgehog, getting it to start moving and off the road. It hops behind the hedgehog as it makes its way slowly across the road, giving the hedgehog further pecks whenever it stops until it reaches safety. Another YouTube clip shows a hippo who's just given birth. A hyena charges out of the bush and grabs the baby hippo, pulling it away from its mother. But an elephant standing not far away sees the whole event. She charges at the hyena, trumpeting loudly. The hyena drops the baby hippo and flees. Isn't that a beautiful example of fierce compassion? There's one other animal story I love, which has a different twist on this theme of compassion. It's the story of Esther the Wonder Pig. Stephen Jenkins and his partner Derek Walter were given a tiny piglet by a friend who told them that this was a micro pig who would never grow much bigger. But Esther the pig grew and grew and grew until she reached 650 pounds. Steve and Derek realized that they'd adopted a pig that was the size of a regular farmed animal. But by then they were totally attached to Esther, as they realized what a funny, loving, and intelligent animal she was. This inspired them to start a movement to encourage compassion for farmed animals everywhere. They began a social media account in Esther's name, and she soon amassed hundreds of thousands of followers worldwide. One of Esther's fans recently wrote on her Facebook wall, "I don't know how I would have made it through 2020 without Esther." Speaking of 2020, it was quite a year, wasn't it? Compassion in the time of COVID has so many faces. Many people in our church community have reached out to others who are isolated and lonely, making cheery phone calls or offering practical help with groceries. Victoria has helped a number of people with financial support through her discretionary fund. I've also heard about people who've been helping out with homeschooling of kids or assisting others to connect to our virtual church services. And church members are practicing the yang of compassion as well through the work of the Social Justice Committee. Can we increase our own capacity for compassion? Although compassion is clearly a naturally evolved instinct, it can be taught as well. In the words of Rabbi Abraham Sotendorp, the teaching of compassion, the exercise of the soul, will open the heart, and then nothing will be impossible. Loving kindness meditation practices derived from the Buddhist tradition can help cultivate compassion for oneself as well as for others. Another traditional Buddhist practice is called Tonglen, also called taking in and sending out, in which we visualize taking in the pain of others with every in-breath and sending them relief and healing on the out-breath. As we do this, we begin to feel compassion for others, and in that process, we develop compassion for ourselves as well. I'll end this talk with a brief quote from the Dalai Lama, who said, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion."
Number 1021, Lean on Me. Here we go. Sometime in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow. But if that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend, and I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
Our benediction today comes from Rumi. Turn me like a water wheel turning a millstone, plenty of water, living water. Keep me in one place and scatter the love. Leaf moves in a wind, straw drawn toward amber. All parts of the world are in love. If the sun were not in love, it would have no brightness. The side of the hill, no grass on it. The ocean would come to rest somewhere. Be a lover as they are, that you come to know your beloved. Be faithful, that you may know faith. The other parts of the universe did not accept the next responsibility of love as you can. They were afraid they might make a mistake with it. The inspired knowing that springs from being in love.
In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, sorrow falling down like rain, I await the sun again. I choose love. I choose love. In the midst of war, I choose peace. In the midst of war, I choose peace. In the midst of war, hate and anger keep me sore. I will seek the good once more. I choose peace. I choose peace. When my world falls down, I will rise. When my world falls down,